All right, so we're getting pretty close to the end here, but now let's jump into the 2007. What's it called? Is it a remake, reboot, reimagining, or whatever?
Reboot. I call it a reboot because it's
Yeah,
it's not exactly a shot for shot remake, but it's certainly not a it's certainly not a continuation.
right. But yeah, directed by Rob Zombie, who at this point was known for making House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, and
Yes.
clearly, he wanted to take to put his own spin on the franchise, and it led to a very polarizing final product.
Yes, polarizing is a very euphemistic definition to use for it. I when they announced that Rob Zombie was doing Halloween, I actually was excited about it, predominantly because he had appeared on the Halloween 25th anniversary DVD, and he clearly had a great understanding of what made the franchise work, and he was criticizing a lot of the sequels for exactly what we criticized them for. He saw what worked and what didn't, and he obviously had a great respect for John Carpenter. And while I wasn't a huge fan of House of a Thousand Corpses, I actually really liked The Devil's Rejects.
The
It was
Devil's
such
Rejects is a great movie.
it's such an interesting idea that House of a Thousand Corpses introduces this horrible evil family, but then the sequel, we're kind of put in their shoes as the main characters, and we actually kind of get to like them and know them, which is really off-putting, but at the same time very entertaining. So when they said he was doing Michael when he was doing Halloween, I was like, okay, I think this could potentially work.
Yeah, I remember talking to you one time about the Devil's Rejects, and you said something along the lines of, he must be doing something right if he can actually get us to feel some pity for these. I think you used the term sick fucks.
Yeah, because they are absolutely sick. They're terrifying. They're awful people. They look like the Manson family, but at the end, when they're about to be lit on fire, you're actually kind of rooting for them to escape. You actually kind of don't want to see them meet that end, even though they deserve it for all intents and purposes. So yeah, I was excited about him doing Halloween, and when I liked that they just called it Halloween, no fancy moniker. And when they announced that Malcolm McDowell was playing Loomis, I just was like, everything felt like it was coming together almost too smoothly. I'm like, this sounds right. I think Rob Zombie's a good choice for this. It'll be interesting to see Halloween from a different perspective. Malcolm McDowell is a good successor to Donald Pleasance. And I was excited to see where it all went. And I mean, honestly, overall, I like the movie. I know a lot of people hate it because a lot of people they don't like the fact that he created an origin for Michael that a lot of people felt was typical. And I do agree. I think that having the white trash family, the abusive stepfather, was very ID network serial killer documentary, very 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 simple. It was a simple explanation.
It was very generic in my opinion.
Yes.
The way that they make it seem like they have something really serious to say about why he's like this, but it's nothing really specific.
No, yeah, exactly. This movie is like I don't I think I like more of it than I dislike. So that's why I give it more of a positive response because I like the casting choices. I do like how the movie's been Rob Zombieified. That he uses a lot of his name mainstays. You get cameos in the movie from all of his. From his crew. I think Sherry Moon Zombie was actually really good as Michael's mother, even though, like I said, that was a very cliched way to go. His mother is a stripper and she's married to an abusive husband. Very typical, but I thought I really liked her performance, and I really genuinely felt bad for her because like she loses her whole family, and Michael is kind of all she has left, and so she really tries to get out to see him through this trauma. Like she wants Loomis to be able to help him. So I do appreciate that. So while on the one hand I don't like that they went the white trash route with the abusive stepfather and all that, on the other side of it I do like Sherry Moon in the movie, and I do like her relationship with Michael, and I do like the actor who plays young Michael because he was like there were moments where I genuinely felt like he was trying to be a normal kid, but then you just see the darkness in the eyes, and you see the monster that's growing. It is like I said, this almost feels like it feels like a very expensive fan film that's explaining Michael's origins in a very generic way, as you put it, and. So on the one hand, there are elements that I like. On the other hand, I think that the route taken might not have been the best one.
There are a lot of things about this movie that I like. As you mentioned, there are some almost heartbreaking moments with Sherry Moon Zombie, and sometimes she's not even saying anything. It could just be moments where she's sitting with Michael in Smith's Grove, and she's just kind of looking at him, and you can just read the pain that's in her face at that moment.
Yeah, I think one of the most effective scenes in the movie is when you see the time passing. When he's in Smith's Grove at the beginning, there's kind of a hopeful element to it because Michael seems to have repressed what he's done, and he has a blossoming relationship with Loomis, and his Deborah is her name, right? Deborah Myers, is that am I getting that correct?
Yeah,
She's
Deborah.
coming to visit him, but then there's this moment where you start to see the descent that he doesn't want to take his masks off anymore, and he's becoming more disconnected from reality. And then there's the moment where it's Christmas and they're in the empty cafeteria, and it's just Loomis, Deborah, and Michael. Michael's not saying anything, and like you said, Deborah, it's all on her face. She's really broken at this point. And then afterwards, when Michael murders the nurse and all of the dialogue is removed and you just hear the alarm sounding, it is a really uncomfortable scene. And when Deborah tries to reach for Michael and he growls at her and she just winces back, it's really uncomfortable and heartbreaking to watch. If this was a movie about the origin of a serial killer that wasn't necessarily Michael Myers, I think the movie would have gotten more of a positive response, honestly.
Although I do have to question why they would give it a mental institution inmates metal utensils.
Tell me about it. That was a big faux pas, but there is an ineptitude to Smith's Grove in this series. Obviously, you can tell, you can just tell. No one's really doing their job, are they? And
No.
even Loomis, and I have to say, it was really risky to take this route with Loomis, but Rob Zombie, I think, realized that having the Van Helsing character who spouts the Shakespearean dialogue about good and evil was too hokey. So he creates an opportunistic prick out of Loomis, and I actually kind of like it. When I first saw it, it turned my stomach because I'm like, I don't like seeing a character like Loomis turned into something like that. But then I'm like, you know what? Like, there's not much else you can do with the character. So like, there's that moment where we're finally in the present day, and he tells Michael that they're through and that he can't work with him anymore. And he's like, "Wow, you've been my patient for 15 years. That's longer. That's twice as long as my first marriage." You just get an idea that his life went to shambles while trying to help Michael, and so his compensation package is he's now making money off of Michael's name and by writing a book about
Yeah.
him. And I like that now all of the rhetoric he uses, the devil's eyes and pure evil and death has come to your town. All of that now is just a performance because he wants to sell a book. Now I don't think he's a total bastard. I think he definitely knows his hands are bloody and he's trying to make it right.
He's not a bastard in this movie
He's
anyway.
a real prick in the second one. That's not even a question. Uh, but I do like how he's more of a conflicted character in this movie. He's not the pure of heart monster hunter that Pleasance's Loomis was. He's someone who's definitely more compromised, and I think there's something heartbreaking about the fact that he failed him. He failed Michael, and he couldn't save him. And so I do appreciate that, and I think that's a great confrontation at the end, which is still like I think they meant for Loomis to die, because it looks like Michael is crushing his skull, but then in the next one he's
Yeah, I think that
fine.
was the intention.
Yeah, I think
Although if you watch the director's cut, there's one more quick moment where after when Michael's like walking past him, that Loomis like tries
grabs his
to
leg.
grab he grabs his leg and slides off,
Yeah,
which is the only way we know that he's alive at that point.
yeah, that's that. I do remember that, and I actually remember being relieved because I knew that they would probably do a sequel, and I was looking forward to Malcolm McDowell trying, to take on that role again. I love Malcolm McDowell. I think he's one of my favorite actors, and he's very much a hit and miss guy when it comes to his career. And so I was really, I really wanted this one to get nailed out of the park. And I liked they made him more humorous. He definitely is more of a crowd pleasing Loomis. A lot of his lines got the big laughs in the theater.
Yeah, I thought that he was a great successor to Donald Pleasance. It's not just an imitation of that character. He definitely puts his own spin on it.
Yeah, I think he just knew that trying to imitate Donald Pleasance was just going to be was just a terrible idea. Um, and the cast overall, I think the cast is pretty good. It's filled with a lot of very familiar faces. Like I said, Sherry Moon's very good. The actress who plays Laurie, oh, what's her name?
Scout Taylor-Compton.
I liked her as Laurie, especially because I liked how she's not the saint anymore. Like this girl probably has given a couple of hand jobs in her life. She definitely is not the. She's not like the saintly. I'm gonna go home and read books on a Friday night type girl. She's someone who likes to go out with the girls. She's someone who likes to have a good time. I liked her relationship with Annie, and I liked Annie more in this one than I think I did in the original. I liked Danielle Harris as
Yeah,
Annie.
yeah.
She's a very likable character, and I think someone even said that they would have preferred her be the main character in the movie. And they're not totally wrong. I do actually like her a lot, and I was actually glad that they let her live in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I liked the cast.
Yeah, yeah. I think Scout gets some flack for this movie, but I think that's just more of association with the movie in general because I found her like very girl next door, but in a different way than Jamie Lee Curtis was a girl next door. She's more perky, she's more spunky,
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah, like you've seen Cabin in the Woods, right? Like
yeah,
the end of that movie when Sigourney Weaver's character is explaining all of the tropes, the archetypes of their characters. When she refers to the main female character as the Virgin, she goes the Virgin, and she goes, "We take what we can get." You know what I mean? Because they know that, like, honestly, even in the 70s, the idea of someone 16, a pretty 16, 17-year-old girl who is still a virgin was unheard of, so this Lori strikes me as a girl who, like, who is fun, is adventurous, but at the same time is sweet and kind, and she has a great relationship with her step parent, with her foster parents, which I liked too. I liked how you got to see her her dynamic with her and Dee Wallace, who plays her mom,
yeah.
which was a great getting the mother from E.T. to play her doomed foster mother. The movie's littered with good cameos, actually.
Danny
I
Trejo.
Danny Trejo, that talk about a heartbreaking character because he's the only one who shows mercy to Michael and he gets a horrible death. And at that point, to show that Michael is unrepentant and there is no more humanity, he's completely gone. And interestingly enough, in the director's cut, Michael actually has a heroic moment where he saves a patient who's being raped by the guards and his friend. And I can understand why they removed that from the movie because I think at that point they didn't want the audience to be siding with Michael at all. And having him basically have a heroic moment where he saves a girl from rape is that I mean once again very different, and I'll give Rob Zombie credit for that, but it didn't belong in the movie. I think there's a point where you need to stop trying to humanize your villain and just let him be a villain at some point.
Well, I'm not sure that that was the intention that he tried to save the girl. I think the only reason he kills those two guys who were raping her was because
They touch his masks.
they're like yeah they're touching his masks. But
No, yeah, that is the truth.
it's
Yeah.
yeah it's a more unpleasant way of watching him escape, but it makes a lot more sense than in the theatrical version where he's just getting transported somewhere and he just breaks out of handcuffs like a fucking Superman or something.
Yeah, that definitely is something out of a superhero movie, isn't it? Just a little more violent. Yeah, they decided to go the route of having just go straight gore porn on that one and just have him ripping people's throats out and smashing people's heads in and just going all out, and it is definitely more aggressive. And yeah, you're right. When he kills those guards, it is predominantly because they're screwing with his masks. But even regardless, he leaves the girl alive. So like he kills
Hmm.
these two. So clearly there's almost like there's a method there when Michael should not have a method. Michael should be kind of an indiscriminate killer. So the theatrical cut has him killing all the guards and then killing his only friend, which is to show that he's finally given up on any shred of humanity. And this movie goes balls deep on the whole their brother and sister thing. That they don't shy away from it. They right away, you see Laurie as a baby in this. They actually show her as a little baby, and her name is Angel Myers, which is a little on the nose, but um, I appreciated that if he was gonna keep that element of the mythology, he just went right for it and just had little baby Laurie in there, even going as far as her basically witnessing her mother's suicide too, which was pretty macabre. Um, but it's a good looking movie too because Rob Zombie's a very competent director, so it's a good looking movie. He keeps the iconography. The mask is the best mask since the first one because it's
That's a
essentially
great mask. Yeah.
it's an exact copy of the original, and there is something really unsettling about little Michael when he's a boy wearing wearing the mask, right? Because like you see his little body, but like the big mask. There's something really unsettling about that image when he removes the clown mask and he puts the Michael Myers mask on, officially kind of donning his face. I liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. But it is the best mask since the first two films because Rob Zombie went through great pains to like exactly recreate the mold for it. So I'll give him credit for that. Um, I understand people's criticisms for the casting of Tyler Mane because he is like the boy is this small boy and he sprouts into Sabretooth. Like he's a WWF superstar now. Was he lifting weights while he was in there? What
Yeah,
like did
I
he
can
take
almost
some hormones?
I can almost understand how he would grow so tall because that's not something you can control or anything. But for him to be so hefty and so strong.
Yeah, no, yeah. The height I can forgive because he was prepubescent when he was put in the asylum. So I can imagine that he had just a really insane growth spurt. Um, uh, but the him basically being big enough where it's almost logical that he can crush people's skulls. I was just like, I don't know when the hell that happened, but I guess more power to him.
Now, what's interesting is that the first time I ever watched this movie, it was actually the work print version that got leaked online just before the movie came out. So there are some things that are a little bit different in it, like some of the music and most notably the ending.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah. The movie opens up with Monster Mash instead of Mr. Sandman.
right,
I
yeah.
remember that.
But I felt like the way it ended originally, from Loomis encountering Michael in front of the house, and then the police showing up, and then eventually shooting him. In some way, it would have felt like more of a bookend because the movie up until then hadn't been so much about the story between Michael and Laurie as between Michael and Loomis. So I felt like that would have been a good conclusion to that arc in a way.
Yeah, both endings work for me. The ending with the police showing up and Loomis trying to talk some sense into him and him being heartbroken and seeing Michael getting blown away. It's a fitting ending considering that, yeah, the biggest, the kind of the heart of the movie became Loomis and Michael's relationship, and really exploring it, because in the original films Loomis doesn't see Michael as a human and wants to destroy him, whereas in this set of films Loomis actually does see him as a boy who he failed, and it's heartbreaking for him. It's a very different dynamic, and it is a poetic ending. However, the ending that they chose to go with, the theatrical ending, also has a bit of poetry in there, where when Laurie has to shoot him in the head and she's screaming, it's a direct mirror of when Deborah shoots herself, and when the gun goes off, Laurie starts screaming and crying. So like Deborah kills herself, and the baby goes, Laurie as a baby starts screaming and crying, and then cut to the end where she ends up putting Michael down and she screams and cries, and then it cuts to black. It's the same edit, because it cuts her scream off with cut to black both times. So there's a
Oh
bit of
yeah.
poetry there's a bit of poetry in parallel in both endings, and clearly they couldn't have both. So they went with more of the shock. They went with the bloodier ending, definitely, with where it
Yeah.
becomes a cat and mouse between her and Laurie, and she has to kick her survival instincts in. And I think at that point, Rob Zombie kind of knew that if there was a sequel, it was going to be about Laurie and not Loomis. So I think that was the idea of taking Loomis out of the action and making it all Laurie versus Michael, and having her be the hero in this case, and not have Loomis be the big grand hero who comes in and blows Michael away and have that big great moment. So I mean, I give him credit. I like the fact that it ended in the Myers house and it didn't end at one of the babysitters' houses. Uh, it is quite a gory and provocative ending with her shooting him and the blood covering her, and then it cuts to the family film of little Michael and little Laurie, which I thought was really dark. I mean, I thought that was such a depressingly dark ending. So I give him credit. I think, honestly, thinking the movie over, I think I like it a lot more than I realized. I saw the movie twice in the theaters, and I just remember really liking it, because I felt that he didn't so much remake the movie or reboot the movie. I felt like Rob Zombie basically took the original script and just decided to flesh out more elements to it and explain more, which of course, when you think about Halloween as a story, it works better ambiguously. It works better in the shadows and the dark. It works better without the blood and the gore. But Rob Zombie decided to do his version, and for what it is, I think it's fine. I think it's an alternative, but it's a little bit of an Elseworlds origin story for Michael. And look at it this way: between this and Thorn, I think this origin definitely works a little bit better.
Yeah, that's what I said when I did my written review of Curse of Michael Myers. That there are people who don't like this movie, but would you rather they have continued with that Thorn storyline?
I don't think anyone would rather that. I think that's. I think they definitely made the right decision in, if they were going to do an origin. I think that just keeping. I would rather them have gone generic and simple than try something uh, really over the top, like a freaking curse, or the whole thorn idea. That just rubs me the wrong way. But yeah, I think overall it's a pretty solid movie. I think some of the acting's a bit over the top. I think everybody kind of is a bit arch in the movie. Like, I love William Forsythe, but like his stepfather character is he's just the most disgusting human being in the world right off the bat, and everybody is just kind of over the top except for kind of the core. It's like you have the core characters: Loomis, Laurie, Deborah, Michael, and then everyone surrounding them is kind of in a different movie. They're in Devil's Rejects still. They're still
Yeah.
in House of a Thousand Corpses. And these other characters are kind of in a more grounded Halloween movie. So I think the movie has a little bit of an identity crisis. I think sometimes Rob Zombie wanted to make an original Rob Zombie movie, and other times he wanted to make a fleshed out homage to the original Halloween.
Yeah, I've always felt like most of his characters are just the craziest nutballs who like curse like a sailor in front of everybody, and have
Yeah.
these really morbid tendencies.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way of putting it. Yeah, they tend to be cartoons sometimes.
I do think overall the movie is at its strongest when it is its own creation. It's only when it's trying to be, you know, overly faithful to the original where there's just not as much to watch.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, the movie definitely, like I said, it has a bit of an identity crisis because there are times where the movie feels like it wants to very much be a remake of Halloween, and then there are times where it wants to very much be a Rob Zombie movie. And sometimes, surprisingly, sometimes it gels, and then other times it really does not. So it's definitely on the shoddier side. But overall, I think it's pretty solid. I think in terms of filmmaking, in terms of judging the film on its own, it's definitely one of the better made Halloween movies of the franchise. Especially because, like we had been saying, Rob Zombie is a pretty competent director. So I think the movie actually is a little bit better than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I don't always like his writing, but the way he can get his locations and performances out of his cast, like we said, this is a great cast. I love McDowell and Brad Dourif
Oh,
and all
Brad
those guys.
Dourif, yeah. I forgot to mention Brad Dourif. I love Brad Dourif. He's such a great actor, and when they announced him as Sheriff Brackett, I was really excited, and I'm glad that they gave him more meat in the second one. But he's a great actor. Yeah, the movie's littered with some genre favorites, and they do a really. It's kind of a who's who of '80s horror movie actors and. I like that Rob Zombie likes to kind of populate his movies with very colorful characters. Everyone's a little bit memorable. Like even the security guards who are taking Michael for his transport. You got Bill Moseley in there, who's
Hmm.
phenomenal, and they have a funny dynamic. They have a little rapport, and you're like, in the 90 seconds you listen to them talk, they're better than the entirety of those two bumbling cops in Halloween 5. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that he kind of populated the movie with more with at least with memorable characters, whether they're very arch characters like what's his name? Mo Grizzly, is that what his name? The
Um, um, uh, Grizzly. Okay,
Joe
Joe
Grizzly. It's
Grizzly.
Joe
Yes, that's
Grizzly.
right.
Joe Grizzly, played by
Ken
Ken
Foree.
Ken For. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a cat? Like what? Why? Like like Rob Zombie needs Michael. Rob Zombie needs Michael to get the jumpsuit. So let's create a whole colorful character who could probably be in his own movie, and
Yeah.
create this whole character just for him to die a horrible death. So like it's sometimes it's great that Rob Zombie likes to make all these very colorful characters. Other times it's a little misguided. It's like I don't think we needed to have a 3 minute introduction to the man who's going to get killed for his jumpsuit, where in the original film he's just a naked guy in a field who's clearly been killed.
Yeah, and you also wonder just how did Michael get to Haddonfield in this one, especially since they still say that it's like 100 miles away from Smith's Grove is from Haddonfield. I feel like it would have made
Yeah.
it would have made more sense he had if he had hidden in Grizzly's truck uh, and just stayed in there until the truck got to Haddonfield and then killed him for his jumpsuit.
Yeah, there's no sense. There's no logic to it. It just is what it is. This comes down to I have listened to a lot of people talk about the issues with prequels or reboots or origins is the over explanation of everything. For instance, X Men Origins Wolverine is a terrible movie. I think most people agree. They actually take time out of the, if you want to call it a plot, they take time out of the story to explain where Wolverine got his leather jacket. I mean, I don't care. I don't care. In the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean film, they actually have in the flashback. They couldn't just leave the flashback alone. They had to explain that this particular incident got Jack Sparrow his whole costume, and I'm like, I don't care where he got his hat. I mean, Even Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which I think is a great film, has kind of ridiculous moments in the beginning with River Phoenix as young Indy where they explain the whip, they explain his chin scar, they explain his fear of snakes, they explain where he got his hat. I'm like, okay, calm the fuck down. You're like, can you really tell me that his entire existence can be like reduced to this, this one period? So with Michael, it's like, okay, they explain where he got the mask, but then they explain the jumpsuit, and they explain this, and they explain that. It's like, okay, I don't care. Like they even go as far as in the first film, Loomis sees the matchbook of the Red Rabbit or something along those lines, and
Yeah,
then
the Rabbit in Red, I think it's called.
yeah, the Rabbit in Red. And then in this movie, that's Deborah's occupation. She's a dancer at that. And I'm like, they need to explain everything. I'm like, sometimes just leave things to homages, or sometimes just don't worry about it. Like I don't care. I don't care where Michael got his jumpsuit. I don't care that where the Rabbit in Red or the Red Rabbit or whatever the hell it's called. I don't care about any of that. Like they even have a scene where Loomis buys the gun. They have a
Oh,
scene where there's a scene with him and Mickey Dolenz where he is buying the gun, and I'm just like, what was the point of that? Like it's kind of a funny scene, but it kind of belongs in a different movie, because can't we just imagine that this guy has a gun? Like you didn't worry about it in the first film. In the first film, he has a pistol, and that's it. He's got a permit for it. End of story. That's it.
yep.
Yeah. So anyway, that's some of my gripes with the film. I think that over explanation can be a real detriment in prequels or reboots or spin-offs, etc.
Yeah. One last note: something that's definitely worth watching is that it's on one of the DVDs of this movie. There's a 4-hour documentary about the making of the movie. It's really interesting to watch, and you can tell just from watching it that Zombie did have a lot of passion that went into making this movie.
Yeah, you can tell he very much loves the original film, and you could tell that he really wanted to. It was probably a very difficult situation to be in. He had become pretty high profile. He's a musician and a director. It's a very unique situation to be in, and to be, he talked a lot of, he was talking a lot of trash on the 25th anniversary Halloween DVD about what went wrong with the sequels. And Kevin Smith, who notoriously is kind of a big pundit for comic book films, apart from being a well-known director, people want to know what he thinks about comic book films all the time because he's a big comic book guy, even as a comic book store in Jersey. He's but he has said in the past, I don't want to direct a big superhero film because then I'll never be able to criticize them ever again. And he's absolutely right. And that's kind of what happened with Rob Zombie. It's like you were totally into listening to what he thought about the Halloween franchises back when he was just kind of the cool hip director who did, House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, but now he's taking the big boy chair. He's now succeeding John Carpenter. Now you have to put your money where your mouth is, and I'd imagine that was probably so stressful. So like I said, he ends up making a movie that kind of feels half an homage to Carpenter and half of I'm making my own Rob Zombie film, and so that therein kind of lies the issue. And I think he took it. I think he took the criticisms personally because in his Halloween 2, he then goes so far in the opposite direction that then he outright makes a very uncomfortable movie that I don't think is divisive. I think outright no one really really likes Halloween 2 very much. His Halloween 2 at least.
Well, I guess that's a good enough segue to transition into the last movie we're going to be talking about. It's basically Zombies Halloween 2, which, yeah, unlike his first one, just very few people seem to hold much favor with this movie in general. Although, again, I do think that there are some good things about it.
Yeah.
Now, this was actually the first, and I guess so far only, Halloween movie that I've seen in theaters when it first came out. Although I have since seen the original in a theater when it played like a couple years ago.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I saw Resurrection, Zombies first one, and Zombie second one in the theaters. Uh, I remember seeing Halloween 2 on like it was a random weeknight. I had actually like I had missed the opening weekend, and then I saw it with a friend of mine. He actually hadn't even seen the first remake yet, but he just kind of came along with me just for shits and giggles. And we had a good time watching it because we were laughing an awful lot at things we probably shouldn't have been at things we probably shouldn't have been laughing at.
Yeah, I've actually once seen on your YouTube channel where you talk about this movie and you mentioning scenes where Michael was killing and people were laughing, and
Yeah,
none
yeah.
more prominently than when he stabs Octavia Spencer in the hospital 11 times.
Yeah, a mercy killing for her because she belongs in a better movie. God bless her. Yeah, I had an overblown review of Halloween 2 that I put up. I don't know why I even felt the need to. I guess I wanted to talk about it, but no one I knew saw the movie. I felt like everyone kind of stayed home when that movie was released, so I just decided to just babble and gab about the movie for like 2 hours, and yeah, the first. So when he kills Octavia Spencer, the first few stabs, the audience kind of winced and it was uncomfortable because they were brutal stabs. But then when he did it, 8 or 9 more times, the audience started laughing, and then they kept doing this throughout the movie, and it became his new
Yeah,
thing to just constantly stab. And I really started questioning, and I'm like, is Rob Zombie trying to get a rise out of us right now? Because he is a quirky son of a bitch, and he is a weird, very strange kind of, artist. Is he being very clever and kind of making a bit of a satire? Is this his commentary on our criticism from the first film where he's saying, people were probably criticizing him for not making it Rob Zombie enough, and then people were probably criticizing it for not making it Halloween enough, so he decided to just kind of go full on and just really ramp everything up to 11.
I
And
think he was told by producer Mustafa Akkad's son, Malik Akkad, that basically you can do whatever you want this time. You don't have to feel bounded by like remake restrictions in a way. And he clearly embraced that.
that was the thing that I was excited about the most about the movie, was because when you remade the first one, there were certain guidelines you probably would want to follow. The Myers house, Loomis, Laurie, all Smith's Grove, all the hallmarks of the original film. But with Halloween 2, once you start doing sequels to remakes, you don't very rarely do sequels to remakes follow the original sequels. You know what I mean? Like The Mummy Returns wasn't a remake of a sequel to the original Mummy. It was a sequel to the current Mummy. Well, that current Mummy back then, not the shit movie that came out this year. But you get my point. Like once the franchise
Yeah.
starts over, you don't have to worry about, like, the Bond series started over again, with Casino Royale, and they didn't decide they're not going to make From Russia with Love or Doctor No their next movie. They're going to make their own ones now. So with Halloween, it was like, oh, they're bringing Rob Zombie back to do Halloween 2, but now we're in uncharted territory. He could do anything he wants. So that was really exciting. And the result is, I'll give him this. He makes, I will say this, save for the Season of the Witch, it's the most unique of the Halloween movies, I think. I mean, even, I
And I
think,
think it is one of the most visually interesting in the entire series.
oh yeah, that's not even a question. I think the actually seeing things from Michael's perspective was really interesting. You actually see what Michael sees, and he sees images of his mother and the white horse, and very David Lynch with that white horse and all that. Um, uh, but he clearly wanted to go for a strange character study, and I made this comparison in my review. Oh God, how many years ago was that? What, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. That something about it reminded me a little bit of the Bride of Frankenstein, where after the events of the first movie, the monster is thought to be dead, and so he walks off into the wilderness and essentially begins to evolve, but it's for better or for worse because the more human the monster becomes, possibly more dangerous they become. When with Michael being off in the wilderness for a year, this movie actually chronicles what happens to him over the course of the year. He goes off and he becomes basically a mountain man, like, and he you can tell he's biding his time, and he's going to come back more vicious and more violent than ever before. It's just that while these ideas are kind of geared up, they're not really paid off it's because while Michael is crazy, and he's kind of one of our main characters. Laurie is supposed to be the person who grounds us, but Laurie is losing her mind because the
Yeah.
PTSD is kicking in, and Loomis has become a complete prick. So it's a very difficult movie to enjoy because you don't have an anchor. In the first movie, Michael was a boy and you saw him as a kid, and then you had Deborah, then you had Loomis, then you had Laurie. You had a nest of characters that felt like people, whereas this movie, you really felt lost in the woods on this one. There was no one holding your hand in this one, and maybe that was the intention, but it makes for a very uncomfortable viewing experience.
Yeah, I think the whole intention was for it to be a constant anxious feel because it just seems like nothing's really gone their way, and it's never really gonna go their way. It's just them having to deal with what's happened to them.
Yeah, exactly right. I liked how there were repercussions from the first movie. I mean, the incident where Linda's father confronts Loomis at the book signing was really interesting. Pulling a gun was a little over the top, but the whole movie is kind of over the top. But
Yeah.
the movie really gets very satirical. I mean, Loomis looks like Alex Trebek in the movie with the mustache. He looks completely ridiculous. The scene where he's being interviewed by Chris Hardwick, who basically plays a Conan O'Brien type, and then I think it was Chris Hardwick. It definitely sounded like him. And then Weird Al Yankovic is the other guest. Like, honestly, I almost wish that Zombie had just gone full satire and just completely made fun of the whole goddamn experience. I think once again you'd have something a little more consistent. But it's really weird when you're watching this movie and you have these strange moments with Michael seeing images of Deborah with a white horse and little Michael with the mask, and then it cuts to Loomis, at a taping, getting made fun of by Weird Al Yankovic. It's a strange. It's just an incredibly strange movie.
It's one of the most surreal moments of the entire franchise. Just seeing Weird Al in that situation, especially when he actually brings up the Austin Powers Mike Myers.
Yeah, like yeah, because right there, that's sort of like Mike Myers has been popular and famous since the mid '90s, and yet this franchise has continued to endure. And you'd figure at some point they'd work that joke in, but I guess they never wanted to break that fourth wall. But yeah, this is the first time a movie actually acknowledges that there are two very famous Michael Myerses.
Although there actually was in the original script of H2O, the characters are watching a Mike Myers movie on TV. I think it was So I Married an Axe Murderer, but then they changed
Uh,
it so that they're watching Scream 2 instead.
Yeah, So I Married an Axe Murderer is a damn good movie. People really need to watch that movie. That is a funny, very underrated movie, but that's neither here nor there. Um, in terms of things I liked about the movie, I'm like going back to what I was saying of Brad Dourif. I liked that Laurie was living with the Brackets. I think that was really sweet, and it showed the friendship between the two of them. And there was kind of finally a sense of normalcy where she got to sit around a dinner table with with Lee and with Annie. I thought that was really
And they're
nice.
all just that scene where they're all just sitting around eating pizza. I think is a really great scene.
That is a great scene, and I love that Brad Dourif makes a reference to Lee Marvin, and they have no idea what he's talking about. It's a really sweet. It's sweet. I enjoy that a lot, and it makes it all the more tragic when Annie actually dies, because it's just one of those things where it just feels so icky, because it's like, they went through, they survived just narrowly the last movie, only to die in this one. It's kind of like Randy
Yeah,
in Scream 2 or Rachel in Halloween 5. It's like, fuck. But I
that
appreciate.
that's so one of the most heartbreaking deaths in this whole franchise. It might just be because it's Danielle Harris playing Annie, and we've been with her for so long. But
Yeah.
I remember when I saw it happen, I felt almost felt this lump in my stomach in a way.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's really sad that it's sad that that happens. But they do pay it off, because I do appreciate that they allow. I'm glad that they allowed Sheriff Brackett to play out his revenge, and I loved the way it's done, because there's that great moment where after she's found dead, he's just sitting on his own porch, just kind of like he like with they just like just sitting there in complete and utter silence, and then they come out and tell him that they've got a lead, and he's just like, okay, he's very soft spoken. He's just like, let's do this. And then you see it, he's holding it all back, so when he completely loses it, and I'm glad he gets the kill shot on Michael, or at least the shot that gets him in position for the kill shot.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. That was the ending scene's pretty effective. I'll give him that.
Now, let me ask you this: have you ever seen the director's cut of this movie?
I actually haven't. No, I didn't even know there was a director's cut.
I would recommend watching that because it's not like most director's cuts where they might just have a couple of scenes go on a little bit longer. It's actually very different
Okay.
because in the version we have, we see Laurie trying to hold things together, but just kind of struggling a little bit. But in the director's cut, she is off much worse. She has a couple of blow up moments at Annie, and there's an extra scene with her psychiatrist, which, by the way, getting psychiatric help from Margot Kidder.
Margot Kidder.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was definitely that. You know what's really upsetting about that is I remember a couple of movie websites making kind of a big deal that Margot Kidder was going to be in Halloween 2, and I was excited to see her, but she's only in one scene, and that's really like, come on. Like I do enjoy the audacity of her, of Margot Kidder of all people, being the one to try and get her back on track psychologically. But yeah, that was just that was a one-off cameo, kind of like a lot of the people in zombies films. But yeah, you know what? I might take a look at the director's cut and give it a fair shake, because like I said, there are elements in this movie that I think are pretty solid. I think that it feels uncertain again. It's like, I don't know whether he's going for satire. I don't know whether he's making a commentary, or if this is just simply the movie he wanted to make, and this was the horror film he wanted to make, and and we'll take it as it is. I thought the ending of the theatrical cut is pretty solid. Homaging Psycho by maybe suggesting that Laurie is now going to be the new killer. Well, was going to be the new killer. Once again, a payoff that doesn't continue, because with Jamie at the end of 4, and then Laurie at the end of Zombies Halloween 2, they will never get past Michael as the killer. Like they've got to stop teasing that, because it's never going to happen. Like, stop pretending. It's like I used to watch the show 24, and after every season they would introduce a young agent, and they would always be like, oh, in case Kiefer doesn't want to come back, we're going to make him the new agent, and then that character would either be killed off or written off, and Kiefer would just continue on. So I'm like, stop telling us you're going to replace him with a younger agent because no one is going to fucking watch. Just continue with the person that you're continuing with. And that's the thing with Halloween. Is like stop trying to fake us out with these, oh, it'll follow this as the new killer. We're never going to get a new killer. It will always be Michael Myers. That's just the way it's going to be. And I firmly believe in the upcoming one. I think that we definitely will be seeing Michael Myers again in the new Halloween. There's not a chance in hell that they are going to make this new Halloween without Michael Myers.
Yeah. As far as this movie is concerned, yeah, it is very strange and it has a very odd pace and sense of humor, but it also has a lot of dynamics that we hadn't seen before, and that alone, I think, at least makes it better than some of the lesser sequels that we had seen before. So I really don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say.
Well, at the end of the day, like I've said before, like Rob Zombie's a competent director, and he knows how to make a really good looking movie, and his H2 is a well made movie. It looks good. It's got some interesting choices in editing and music, and for the most part, I think the acting is pretty solid. Like I said, I just think that we lost that human anchor by kind of making everyone nuts in the movie or unlikable. Um, but yeah, in terms of watchability, I would say that it's probably better than I would probably put this on over Five or over Resurrection or even over the
Yeah,
Curse of Michael Myers, because
definitely.
like I said, it comes down to this was at least it was at least a complete movie, and I appreciate I appreciate the gothic horror elements that he added to it. I think the first one was, like I said, a kind of split between Rob Zombie aesthetic and Carpenter aesthetic, and his Halloween 2 felt more gothic to me, and there was something a little more ethereal about it. It was definitely a darker film from the first one.
Yeah, the shot that I always remember is when we see Sherry Moon Zombie and young Michael. By the way, this is a terrible replacement for the kid in the first movie, but
It
it's
doesn't look anything like him.
yeah, it's when they go to this dinner table with all these strange looking creatures, and we see Lori lying on top of the table. I just thought visually that was a real spectacle.
That was the otherworldly dreamlike sequences are definitely some of the more compelling aspects of the movie, and a risky move because dream sequences aren't exactly something that the series employed before. You only got some of that with Laurie in H2O when she'd have flashbacks, but having visions and dreams is not something that you see often in this franchise, and I think actually, and going into elements of almost the supernatural, almost suggesting that Deborah is sort of the specter of Michael Myers' dark passenger, and that she's now occupying Laurie's head. It's really intriguing at the idea that
Hmm.
their mother quite literally is the face of the affliction that's going to take both of them, the evil that's going to take hold of them. Going back to the mother, which Psycho did, and to a degree Friday the 13th, but mostly Psycho is kind of a film that definitely explored the hold that a mother has over you, and uh, an interesting idea that the mother, the white horse, and little Michael would sort of be these strange spectral images that represent the Myers affliction. I thought that was really interesting and could have been explored in a third film, but this movie, I was just looking up at Box Office Mojo, and it made them back their money, and they made a little bit of a profit on it. It looked like it cost about 15 million to make. It made like 34, 35 million, which is over double the budget, but definitely wasn't what they were looking at. The first one did about 80 million worldwide. I think they probably wanted this one to be 80 to 100, and it didn't even scratch that. It barely made 40 million worldwide. So and I think that was just I think that was the kind of the nail in its coffin. And at the time, it was competing with the Saw franchise, which had sort of taken everybody by storm. And then around that time, Paranormal Activity came out as well. I think you were just seeing the horror genre switch away from the slasher
Yeah.
and going into a different territory. And it happens. Halloween ebbs and flows with history, and it looks like now that horror has had a huge resurgence. Now we're gonna see Halloween come back in full swing.
Yeah, but the popularity now is more of the supernatural stuff, which again has gone through peaks and valleys in terms of its popularity. So
Yeah, absolutely.
there are always phases where a certain thing is more hip than anything else.
Well, every genre has, for every Insidious, we have a Ouija. You know what I mean? Like, so like, and for every Conjuring, we have an Annabelle. It's horror movies are never foolproof. This year, we've gotten pretty lucky with Split, Get Out, and now we have It. So like this year's been pretty solid for horror movies, but I think Blumhouse and all of them have been coming out, have been doing really well. Is John Carpenter working with Blumhouse, or is that a is or are they still over at Dimension? Does Dimension even exist anymore?
I'm reading that it's actually being distributed by Universal.
Wow. Well, Universal distributed Halloween 2, so they have a history with the franchise. But hey, that's great. Universal can definitely. I mean, Universal's been doing fine with the Furious series, and they have Jurassic Park. But getting a horror franchise certainly wouldn't hurt their numbers.
Something really quick I want to point out. It's going back to the original Halloween 2. Being that it was distributed by Universal, you know that there are moments when characters are watching Night of the Living Dead on TV. If this is a Universal film, why put on a public domain film? You could have done anything from the Universal catalog. You had them all at your disposal at that point.
Yeah, no, they literally could have done anything. They could have done Frankenstein or Dracula or
I mean,
Wolfman
it
or
would have
any of
made more
those.
sense if they had shown that movie during the first film.
Yeah, absolutely. I do enjoy the little bit that they use in Halloween too with the "coming to get you, Barbara." I do like that they added that in, especially because he's standing in the background taking their knife while she's trying to make her dumb husband a sandwich. I I enjoy that little bit. Yeah, yeah. It seems like every time there's a Halloween 2, they're always a lot zanier than the first ones, and I do
Yeah.
appreciate that.
All right. Well, now we've got the new Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis returning just in time for the franchise's 40th anniversary. I hope it's going to be good, obviously.
Yeah, no, I'm really hoping this isn't a bust. It's been great to seeing a lot of franchises come back over the last few years, and sometimes it's exciting and welcomed. Like Star Wars is back in full swing, and then other times it's not so welcomed, like Independence Day Resurgence, which is trash. Sometimes this stuff works. Creed. Bringing back the Rocky franchise. Sometimes these things really work, and since it's John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis, this is the first time that the two of them will be working in tandem on a Halloween movie since 1980, 1981. So this is a huge deal, and the fact that Carpenter is going to be godfathering this movie, and he's not just slapping his name on it, because he's not like that. He doesn't. John Carpenter is not the type of if he's involved in a film, he's involved in a film. So I'm looking forward to seeing him coming back to it and guiding it along and picking a proper director. I'm excited to hear who they get to direct the movie. I isn't oh God, who else is involved in this movie? There's another big name that's involved. Oh, actually, don't they have a director?
They have writers right now. I've read that it's being written by David Gordon Green and Danny McBride.
Oh, that's
Oh wait,
exciting.
no, actually, I'm reading that Green is directing it.
Oh, okay, all right. That's interesting because he's not really a horror movie director. So that's Yeah, he directs more like dry comedies or dramas, so I appreciate that. I actually like when directors who go against their catalog. I mean, who would have thought that Jordan Peele could make Get Out? I mean, so I'm and I love Danny McBride, and Danny McBride's the type of guy that he's a fan, and I think that he'll probably do a lot of respect for this movie. I'm really glad that they clarified in the articles that Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back as Laurie Strode. Because at first I was afraid that
Yeah.
they were doing another reboot and she was going to play a wholly new character. I want her back as Laurie Strode. I like there was something like about the like I didn't mind the Ghostbusters remake, but seeing the Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver show up as people who aren't their original characters was kind of annoying to me. So
Yeah, I
I
didn't like seeing that.
yeah, it's like if you could get them to do the movie, then why not have them play their original characters? So that's why I'm excited to see her back as Laurie Strode. It's been great, the last few years we've been able to get Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher back to Star Wars. Now we're getting Jamie Lee Curtis back to Halloween. It's a great time to be a geek. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to seeing what they're gonna do. When they like a year ago when they announced John Carpenter was gonna usher a new Halloween movie in, I was excited, but at the same time, I didn't want to get my hopes up because I felt like it was gonna turn into John Carpenter's doing this for is bringing Halloween back, and then after a few months I was gonna hear that the project is stalled, and then I was gonna hear creative differences, and then eventually he was gonna get to the point where he'd drop out or something. I was getting very nervous about that, but now that they have a writers, director, and Jamie Lee back, I'm so much more confident I can actually get on the hype train for this now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that if she wasn't coming back to reprise her role, that no one would really care and it wouldn't pick up nearly as much steam. But now you feel like it really has some legs to it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that you're feeling the hype now. A couple of weeks ago when they announced her return, I mean, the internet exploded. People were going nuts over it. So uh, there's already a hype machine building for it. So when we get that first trailer, I think that it's gonna blow the roof off, and it's gonna be a welcome return because Halloween kind of went out with a whimper. It's Resurrection wasn't very good, so they decided to reboot it, and then it was very divisive, and then the second one, no one really saw, and that kind of went out, and it just became uncertain. Halloween became an orphan for a bit, and there was just an uncertainty to it, and that's kind of what's happening with all of the icons. They're trying desperately to get Friday the 13th back on. They're trying desperately to get
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street back on, and I will bet you anything that off the heels of John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis coming back to Halloween, you are going to start hearing rumors of Robert Englund coming back for Freddy Krueger. You're going to get that pretty quickly, I think. They might even bring Corey Feldman back to Friday the 13th.
I would love to see that.
Who wouldn't? So I mean, who the hell knows what they're gonna do next? I think it's very in vogue to go back and bring back nostalgia now. So I think you're gonna be seeing a lot of that soon.
All right, so I guess we'll start wrapping this up. Just final thoughts on the series in general.
I love this series. I think that comparing it up to the other big horror franchises, I definitely think it's the best. I think it has more winners than the others. I think pound for pound, it just holds up a little bit better. And also, while just going back on the merits of the originals of all of them, I think that Halloween, the original film, the original 1978 film, is a great movie in its own right. Like just pulling it out of the horror genre, pulling it out of um, the franchise itself on its own merits, it's a great movie, and it's spawned a very enduring legacy, and it has survived a lot of really embarrassing failures. So clearly, people enjoy this series, and it's gonna continue to endure. So I'm excited to continue to see more. And like I said, Michael Myers has always been my guy. I've always preferred him over the other big bads. I just love this franchise, so I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, I've honestly preferred the Nightmare on Elm Street films, but you know you can't discount the fact that this is where the slasher craze started, and the look and environment that these movies have created have always been inherently their own. So
Yep.
just as far as you know, all the careers that they spawned and what it did for the genre in general, there is a certain place in their history for these movies, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's no question about that. Yeah, it definitely has cemented its place in cinema history, and um, it's probably my favorite Carpenter film next to The Thing. I just I think he's such a great director. He's such a fan. He really is truly an auteur, and I think that he really created something special. And using it's so inspiring to look at that original movie and see what was able to be done with no money, because it did set off. The chain reaction, because then, because of that movie doing so well off of so little money, other directors were actually given good budgets to try and make something better than that. So he really kind of kicked off a whole craze. I mean, obviously, a lot of credit has to go to Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the original Psycho, of course, but. The slasher genre really kind of got kicked into high gear in '78 when Halloween came out. I mean, $300,000 budget, it made what, $50 million worldwide. That's insane. Like that's an unbelievable success. So it's clearly people still love these movies. So I'm excited to see more of them.
Yep. Now let's just real quickly. I think uh, rate these movies out of 10. I think.
Oh, okay. Individually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, one is a 10 out of 10, without a question. Two, I would say, is about a 7, 6.5, 7 out of 10. Three, I would range it about a 7 out of 10 as well. Four, probably a 7.5. Five, a flat 0. Six, I'll give it a 4 or 5 for ambition. H2O, I give an 8.5. Resurrection, another. I'll give that maybe a 1 or a 2. Just I don't know, because Jamie Lee's in it for a minute or so, and uh, Halloween 2007, I would give that about a 6.5, and then Halloween 2, I'd give about a 5 out of 10. So that's that would be my generic if I had to give them ratings out of 10.
I actually don't give a lot of tens. I very rarely give anything lower than like a 2. But I would say I would give the first one maybe a 9. Uh, 2, I would probably give something like a 5.5 to 6. Uh, 3, I would probably give about the same. I used to rate it lower, but yeah, give it like a 6, I think. 4, I would give give maybe a 7. Um, 5, I would give 3.5 to 4. And for the 6, I would give the theatrical version maybe a 3, and the producer's cut I would probably give a 5. H2O I would give 7.5, I think. Resurrection I would give a 4, and uh, Zombies remake I give a 6.5, and Zombies 2 I give probably I think a 5.5.
Yeah, yeah, I think kind of a similar graph. I think our lines would kind of almost be touching, just about. Yeah, but I think we're kind of on the same page with almost all of them.
Yeah, I
But
think
yeah, I
the
mean,
only difference I probably look back on 6 and the original 2 a little bit worse than you maybe.
yeah, no, yeah, I definitely have an affection for the original Halloween too. Like I don't know what it is. I think it's just because that was definitely one of the ones I watched a lot when I was younger, and so I have a deep nostalgia for it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely do like the original Halloween too a bit more.
All right. Well, that's us talking about the Halloween films. I'm Jeremy Kelly speaking for John Curcio, and if you enjoyed our silly opinions, then have a happy Halloween. And if you didn't enjoy them, well, then have a happy Halloween anyway. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah, enjoy yourself. Be just avoid those mass serial killers and just follow Randy's rules and scream. No sex, no drugs. Never say "I'll be right back," and everything will be okay. You'll be okay.
Okay, trick or treat, motherfucker.
Good one. I like it.